Hello. Welcome to this presentation on Synchronous Online Course Best Practices. My name is Matthew Pittman, and I will be taking you through this presentation today. We'll start with an overview. We'll go ahead and talk about the background and context of why we put this presentation together. We'll talk about the literature review that I did looking for online best practices. We'll talk about setting up for success, success through engagement, and success through interaction. These are three themes that we found when we did the literature review. We'll also talk about next steps, and then I have the list of references used in the literature review. So the background for this is I work for Ivy Tech North Central. We began piloting online courses during the fall of 2012, and they were synchronous online courses using Blackboard Collaborate web conferencing. We provided faculty who were teaching on this during the pilot in the fall 2012 semester and also in the spring 2013 semester with technical training on the functionality of Blackboard Collaborate web conferencing. However, we didn't provide any training or preparation for course design using this new modality. Many of the faculty had taught online before in more of the traditional asynchronous method where it's mostly text-based, or they were face-to-face instructors, but we didn't really give any academic training on how to get that material from the older modalities to this new method of teaching. What we found was many of the students that took the courses didn't enjoy them as much, and it didn't seem like faculty were utilizing the tool to the best that they could. We went ahead and did a literature review to look at what some of the literature was out there. I looked at many articles. I selected 4 for the actual review. And I found 3 common themes. One was technical setup, mostly stuff that happens before you actually begin your session. One was student engagement, and the last was student interaction. So we'll start with setting up for success. One of the common themes we saw in at least 2 or 3 of the articles was setting up your presentation. When you're going to teach synchronous online, there are a few things that you should consider. One is to allow students early access to the session. The articles that we looked at suggested at least 30 minutes. This allows students to get into the session. They can verify everything is working, their microphone, they can do text chat, there's no technical issues with Java or other programs that they need. And it allows them to begin talking to other students in the class, much like they would do in a face-to-face class when they show up before class and they're talking to their friends or getting to know each other in that environment. This allows them to do it in an online environment, which is not really possible in the traditional online environment, but is when you use a tool like web conferencing. Another thing that was brought up in the research was setting up all of the permissions prior to the start of the session. So when you use a tool like Blackboard Collaborate, you have to tell it what permissions you want the students to have, or the learners. So you have options like audio. Can they use a microphone and chat? Can they text chat? Can they use webcams? And other tools like whiteboards, web tours, and application shares. It's recommended and a best practice to set up these default permissions at the beginning of the session before you actually start teaching. This will help make the session flow better for students because you won't be spending as much time changing things as you go through when you're trying to deliver content. One of the goals when you're teaching synchronously like this is to make the tool invisible to the student so that it just seems like to the student, here's the content, there's the instructor, not here's Blackboard Collaborate, and I'm trying to get through Blackboard Collaborate to the content. And this will help with that. The other thing that they mentioned was consider the size of the class. If you have a large group of students, 30 students, 25 students, you really want to consider limiting what communication methods they have. Probably you'd want to limit this to text chat unless you call on them. This will improve the performance of Collaborate because, again, it is online, so there is a technical, internet speed thing going on. So you want to make sure that you are, giving them good performance so that they're not having delays and things like that in the audio feed. And you can help that by limiting how many people are on the audio at one time. It's also really hard to understand when you have 3 or 4 people talking in an audio feed. Blackboard Collaborate does have a hard limit of 6 people talking at the same time, but even with 6, that's very hard to understand what one person is saying. So it's good to limit that. Now, you don't want to, kill engagement, which we'll talk about in a minute, but you do want to facilitate it in a way that might be different than it would be in a face-to-face class. So you want to make sure you're really calling on people and giving them the opportunity to speak before anyone else speaks. So the major takeaway for setting up for success is the more planned and thought out the session is, the more effective engaging it is for students. I also have a note here about Blackboard Collaborate Plan. You can contact someone in the Online Technologies Department at Ivy Tech if you're interested in learning more about that. So the next step is success through engagement, okay? And the big thing here is engage students. Don't use Blackboard Collaborate web conferencing or synchronous online learning as a method to simply lecture. You want to engage them, have a class discussion. As the literature states, the use of synchronous conferencing techniques can offer opportunities for social interaction. It also recommends that you use a webcam when possible to give students a more personal experience. This lets them pick up on some of your nonverbal communication that's really challenging to get in an online environment, but using a webcam you can get some of that across. The next point is success through interaction. Literature reported that the interaction level in a synchronous class to be a significant factor in the effectiveness of the class. Blackboard Collaborate has some great tools for interaction. Helps them stay engaged. Remember, they're sitting in front of a computer. It's very easy to get distracted. You can use polling or quiz features of Blackboard Collaborate web conferencing to ask them questions about content or gauge reactions. You can even use tools like the whiteboard to illustrate points, and even have them help out by filling in a chart or a diagram. Major takeaway for engagement interaction is that it's a two-way tool. Use it not only to deliver content, but also to hear from them as well. Facilitate a discussion, engage learners, make it interactive. And there's a note on the screen there about groups as well. It's a great tool you can use in Blackboard Collaborate to allow them to work together even though they aren't physically in the same place. Next steps would be I'd like to see these best practices piloted in a selection of courses. Take a measure at the end of the course to see how students and faculty liked these best practices. Did they feel it made them more effective? Did the students feel engaged in the course? And to improve, once we figure out which ones are the best, to improve faculty trainings to include best practices that are identified as being effective. So those would be the next steps. We have my final list of references, 4 articles, very good. I definitely recommend reviewing those if you want to learn more about the background of this study. Thank you for listening.